Hi, everyone. My name is Kim, and I'm the founder and creator of Expat Mama. Through these interviews that are both the audio podcast and the new YouTube channel, we educate people about what it's like to be an expat. That's somebody who's left their native country to live in another country, and we tell their stories. Today, my guest is Melissa Ferrin, who's originally from Iowa in the US. She currently lives in, help me out with the pronunciation.
It's Huajuapan de León, Oaxaca.
Oaxaca, Mexico. I could handle just that part. So I'm so excited to interview you today. Welcome, Melissa. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
I'm so glad to have you on. Can you just talk a little bit about where you grew up, what that was like?
I grew up in I think a very typical American middle-class family, kind of almost, you know, the stereotypical two kids, middle-class family in the suburbs of Des Moines, Iowa. Yeah, it was a childhood, almost charmed childhood, because we had, you know, enough of everything that we needed, but we weren't so rich. I feel like the upper class has a whole nother set of problems, right? So, and a lot of times you're more privileged when you don't have those excesses of the upper class. And one thing I think that though, that when I think back on my childhood and where I am now, one thing that impacted me was one of our neighbors, the mother in that family was Mexican, and their house was the exact same floor plan as our house, a typical 1960s ranch house. And but the minute you walked through the door, it was totally different from the inside of our house. And they had lots of artesanías from Mexico and different things, and of course different smells in the kitchen and everything. So it was I kind of feel like that glimpsed into my future for me when I was a child.
So maybe you could say that it planted the seed, because you're like, how can our houses be almost identical but yet such a different feel, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and that caught your attention. That's really interesting. So how old were you when you noticed those types of things?
Oh, quite young. So in their family, they had two boys that were the same age as my older brother, like one just a little bit older and one a little younger than my older brother. So I think as young as like 4 or 5, probably. And my mom and the neighbor woman were joint Boy Scout leaders for my brother's Boy Scout troop. So I was, it was from very young age that I'd go into their house and be like, oh, what's this and what's that, and oh yeah,
really colorful things and that caught your attention at 4 or 5 years old. Those are probably some of your earliest memories, if you think back, right?
Yeah, among the earliest.
Yeah. So okay, I'm sure our listeners just can't wait to hear what you're about. What's the story about how you came to Mexico?
So first, actually my very first time in Mexico was when I was in high school. I did an exchange program, and I was a student in Mérida for during the summer. It was just a short summer exchange, but I was there in that was 1990.
Oh, wow.
And then when I was at university, I decided to study Spanish, and I also studied abroad in Santiago de Chile. And then after I finished is when I saw an ad to go to Ecuador and do an exchange of teaching English for more Spanish classes. And so I took that opportunity to go to Ecuador for 6 months. And after Ecuador, then I kind of caught that bug, the ESL bug, and I went to Japan. I was in Japan for 1.5 years. And then I wanted to come back to the Spanish speaking world. And so I was looking for jobs in Latin America, and I found a job here in Oaxaca. And that's what brought me originally to Oaxaca.
And what year was that?
That was in 1998.
Okay. Yeah. So I just right before we started the interview, I was like, Melissa and I have a lot in common because we've both, and I don't know if you still teach. Do you still teach English? Maybe
Yeah.
Spanish?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I still teach. Actually, I still teach at the institution that I started at here in Mexico.
Uh-huh.
So I teach at a technical university here in Oaxaca.
Wow, you've been there for a while. You are the institution at this point. Oh my gosh, but that's kind of exciting. So so you landed in Oaxaca. I know that you're married to a Mexican. There's a story that I'd like to bridge in the middle here, if I could get the romantic scoop.
Yeah, well, when I first came to here to Huajuapan, actually within the first week, I met the person who I eventually married, although we weren't together romantically at first. I met him through my job, and yeah, after a few months, I knew him from work, and then I also knew that he had studied carpentry when he was in secondary school, but he's a mathematician. But because I knew he'd studied carpentry, I needed some help with. I'd broken a piece of furniture that belonged to my landlady, and I wanted to repair it. And so I invited him over to see if he could look at it and see if it was something we could repair. And that's kind of how we got to know each other, working on repairing a table.
Of course, you thought he was cute before you invited him over to repair the furniture. Tell me the truth, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I know how things go. And those Latino men are hard to resist once they get into your life. I know.
Yeah.
I've fallen in love with one and married one too, but mine was from Argentina. The father of my two boys. Anyway, but this isn't about me. I want to hear about you. So can you talk a little bit about English as a foreign language, which we call EFL commonly? There are some new acronyms that have come in, but I always call it that,
Yeah.
Yeah, so, or ESL.
So, well, the industry of teaching English as a foreign language I always compare it to the food industry, the cooking industry, because there's lots of different paths and there's lots of different levels, right? So there's everything from the short order cook, and when you want a fast food, that's what you want and that's what you need. You don't need somebody who's graduated from the Culinary Institute to be frying up some French fries. But then there's also the way up to the famous chefs and celebrity chefs and everything. So in the industry, there's everything from people who are more like just facilitators and help people learn English, all the way up through the materials writers and the teacher trainers, and there are even celebrities in the EFL industry who go around and give talks and have TV shows and stuff like that. So when I first started, I was obviously like more kind of on the low end. I got into it kind of by accident, as it was an opportunity. But over the years, I've gotten more training. First, I did my first job. I had no training whatsoever, and it was quite a mess. It was kind of amazing that when I think back on it, I'm like, wow, that was, it was like the blind leading the blind kind of thing. But then also, once I came here to Mexico, I was able to do some distance studies and get a master's degree in applied linguistics.
Oh, awesome. I love it. So would you say that you were the native professor in Ecuador, right?
Yeah.
And the only thing you knew was just to speak English, and I don't know if your Spanish was strong at that point when you landed in Ecuador?
Yeah, it was pretty strong. I did my degree in Spanish, so I did have I had fairly strong Spanish, but I also had some background in language teaching, because I could have gone into Spanish teaching in the US. So it wasn't like completely that the only thing I had was I spoke English, but pretty close to that, just a little bit above that.
And now you're in Oaxaca. I'm looking here, and what are you doing down there now?
So I teach EFL at an engineering school. So I'm teaching mostly different kinds of engineering students. They study electronical engineering, mechatronic engineering, computer engineering, and a variety of other engineering. And I'm married to a local from here, and we have 3 kids, 2 teens, and our youngest is in 6th grade of primary school. And we also, he's from a village where we have land in the village. So we also plant trees, and every year we plant some corn with one of his aunts. And I'm also the president of the local Mextisol chapter, which is the Mexican Association of Teachers of English to Speakers of Other Languages.
Nice. And what's the language you speak at home?
We mix English and Spanish, and there are people who, are very strict about not mixing languages or keeping them straight, but I found that it was natural to do that, to mix it. And I couldn't, because I do speak Spanish and I'm around people who speak Spanish, I couldn't pretend to my children that I couldn't speak Spanish. So I do sometimes speak to them in Spanish, and they sometimes speak to me in Spanish and they sometimes speak to me in English. And it's been a really interesting, as a language professional, to have these children at home and watch their language skills develop. Yeah.
And you gotta just do with what other people give you is of no use anyway. You just gotta do what works for your own family, basically.
Yeah. And my husband's English is pretty good too. So he'll speak, he speaks English to us as well sometimes, but obviously his Spanish is stronger and obviously my English is stronger. But when we first met, his English was really basic. So we did start off speaking to each other in Spanish, and then that I found that really hard to break out of that. Once you've established that the language of your relationship is one thing, it's really hard to change from that. But
that's right. That's once you determine that, that's it. There's no bearing from that. Like us, we just speak English at home, but when we were in Argentina, it was all Spanish because Dad was a native Spanish speaker. So things have turned around. I wanted to ask you a couple of things. Of course, it went from my mind just now. Okay, what's it like where you live? Is there an international community, or are you pretty much like the foreigner? I've been in both spots. Where I live right now in Lake Chapala, there are lots of people like me. But when I lived in Argentina, I was the foreigner, the resident American. So what's it like there, where you're at?
So this is a city of about 60,000 residents, and it's not a tourist destination at all.
Okay.
So I'm not the only foreigner, because at the university we have 15 English teachers, and we're all native speakers from a variety of countries. So we have teachers from Scotland, Ireland, England, Jamaica, Australia, Uganda, and in the past we've also had New Zealand and South Africa, and pretty much all the major English speaking countries. So, and then we also have there's 2 Chinese teachers who are from China, and we've had a German teacher who was from Switzerland. So there's a small, maybe like 25 people total who work for the university that are foreigners. And I occasionally meet a few other random wives that have moved here with their husbands. It is a very an area with a lot of migrants, both to the US and then also to northern Mexico, to the big farms in northern Mexico. So occasionally you meet people who, their partner was in the US and then they've moved back with them to Mexico.
Oh, yeah. Those are scattered throughout all of Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah. As well as people that get deported and end up back in Mexico. We've run into quite a few of those and done some interviews about that as well.
Uh-huh.
So, what do you do besides work? For example, do you have any hobbies or interests that you work on?
Yeah, right now, being a mom keeps me pretty busy outside of work. And as I mentioned, I'm involved in the Teachers Association. And so that takes up a fairly big chunk of my time. In the past, I traveled extensively. I've visited about 22 of Mexico's states.
Wow.
And I really enjoy being, outside in the countryside, walking in the mountains. We live right on the edge of town, so we can go hiking basically just out our door and start hiking.
Oh, I'm so jealous. Not that I would hike in this area anyway, but it just sounds beautiful. What's it like as far as like temperature goes, and what's it like there? What does it look like?
Yeah, it's semi-arid, but it's like seasonally arid.
Okay.
So we get rain from June to September or October, and it's very green at that time of year, but then the rains stop and it totally dries out. The countryside is mixed cactuses with small trees and shrubs. Right now there's a lot of a flowering tree called cacahuate, which has big white flowers. Those are in bloom right now, so that's really nice. It's fairly dry even during the rainy season, so it's not like humid when it's hot. It's fairly dry, and we're at 1,600 meters above sea level.
Okay.
So the hottest is around, in Fahrenheit, is, it can get up to 90s in the middle of the day, but it still cools off overnight because of the elevation.
Yeah, so there are two extremes there. Okay. Yeah. What about the local culture? What's it like there?
It's really interesting. I really love living in Oaxaca. There's a lot of variety. We do have some local indigenous languages that you can still hear, sometimes on the street in town, or if you go into the villages, of course. And the Oaxacan food is really, really famous. So there's delicious food everywhere. And I really like Latin music as well. So it's good. With COVID, of course, there, a lot of that cultural activities were shut down, but before that, in the center of town, there'd be almost every weekend some sort of performance in the park, whether it was like a kids dance recital or a musical group or something.
Oh, that's neat. You have 3 kids. So do you have, what do they do, for example? Are they involved in any activities outside of school?
Yeah, they're all in music classes.
Oh, good.
And even though this town is fairly small, we have quite a bit of opportunities for children to study music. So my son was in an orchestra and played French horn in the orchestra.
No.
And one of my daughters plays guitar, and right now she's in a class group where they mostly play traditional Oaxacan songs, like the Llorona and Dios Nunca Muere, La Canción Mixteca, like the kind of the repertoire of famous Oaxacan songs. And my other daughter plays the violin.
Oh, wow. Very good. You've got them in healthy and wholesome kinds of activities. I love it. I was just looking at your questionnaire here. I see that you're into traveling, visiting new places. Have you been able to travel during COVID at all, or?
Not very much.
Okay.
We did do an escape last July down to the coast, where we got like an Airbnb house and met up with my cousin and her family. And I felt like that was a fairly good COVID trip because it was outside of the major beach destinations, but it was a little house right on the beach. So we were able to just kind of be by ourselves, socially distanced, but do something different than what we'd normally been doing. I previously we like to visit a lot of small communities around and see what different things they have to offer, but I really have resisted doing that because I don't want to be the person who might be responsible for bringing the virus into a community where it wasn't previously. So
right, you have to be careful, definitely. So I'm just thinking about, like, what is the closest? I've heard that Oaxacan beaches are beautiful. What is the closest major beach to where you live?
So the mountains are between here and there, so there's really not any like close beach.
Okay.
The closest, I guess, would be Puerto Escondido, and it takes about 7 hours to get there.
Oh, you are quite far. Okay.
Yeah, and it's not far in distance, but it's just because of you have to go up over the mountains, so it is fairly far. But we have had the opportunity to visit almost the entire Oaxacan coast. Puerto Escondido and Huatulco are internationally known, but there are literally hundreds of beautiful beaches in Oaxaca. And one time we did a trip where we went every day, we went to a different beach, just went along the coastline, visiting different beaches.
Nice. Sounds like you've got a great life there, honestly. And
yeah, it's in a lot of ways, it's just a normal life though too, because we are at the university, we are back on campus as of October. So, it's get up in the morning and go to work and come home in the evening, and there's always things to do in the house, or the kids have different activities, or they need some help with their homework, or they need something to complete their homework. So it's like run into town and buy whatever it is that they need to complete their homework.
that sounds like US life too.
Yeah. My friends
Yeah.
from high school and stuff are like, oh, it's so exotic. And I was like, well, it's just the same, I get up and walk the dog the same as you.
Yeah, exactly. Very interesting. You said that you have a blog. Well, you had a blog that you used to work a lot more on. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, my blog is called Undiscovered Oaxaca, and it's on WordPress. And it has it's really gone dormant during COVID because, as I mentioned, I didn't want to, be encouraging people to travel around that much. And the point of the blog is to publish English information about the places that aren't well known in Oaxaca. It's very easy to find stuff about Oaxaca City and the places immediately around Oaxaca City, like within 30 minutes around Oaxaca City, and then of course Puerto Escondido and Huatulco. But there are so many wonderful places, and I had a friend who unfortunately did pass away last year, who he promoted cultural tourism in the region, in the Mixtec region. And he helped a lot of villages set up different cultural or ecotourism activities. And so, but the information for that was only available in Spanish.
In Spanish, right?
Yeah, so I wanted to be able to publish information for the English speaking audience, whether they're native English speakers or other tourists, to be able to visit these places as well, because there's some really beautiful, interesting places, and people who do want, they want to receive tourism, they want to share their culture, their cuisine, their natural places. And so the idea was to make that information available in English.
So when you had it going, did you get a lot of response to people that were interested in coming down?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people that are interested in it, but like I mentioned, with the beach being about 9 hours away, the highways in Oaxaca are not, not the best. So a lot of times, like there's a place called Yosandua in the Mixteca region, which is wonderful. They have this enormous waterfall, and they've got cabins, and there's a zip line, and there's a hanging bridge over the waterfall. And everybody's like, oh, I want to go there, I want to go there. And then they find out it's 5 hours from Oaxaca City. And then they're like, oh, yeah, I want to go there, but maybe not now. Right. Yeah.
And really the best places are the ones that are off the grid, you know?
Yeah.
That are undiscovered, like you say in the name of your blog, Undiscovered Oaxaca. There are so many beautiful places that a lot of international people don't know about. We particularly, my sons and I have enjoyed, you know, going to places that are national tourism, like Bacalar. I don't know if you've been there, heard of us.
Yeah.
It's really like the Maldives of Mexico, and for a third of the price or less. You know, just really beautiful places that a lot of international people don't know about. So that's great that you're getting the word out there, or slowly. And also I also blog, but I found that during COVID, my creativity juices just kind of died along with everything that's going on.
Yeah. And I had to spend a lot of time learning to teach online, because I didn't teach online before that, and taught 3 semesters online, and had to, you know, learn a whole new skill set. And especially in our case, our students, you know, hadn't chosen to study online. So they needed, you know, they needed very special kind of things and considerations because of their internet connections, or I had students who were using only their cell phone data, was the only way that they were connecting for school.
Goodness. Yeah.
And sometimes they even had to, you know, like they had to go up the hill, up the mountain in their village to get signal for their cell phones.
Wow.
They would go up and download material and then work on it, and then climb back up there to send it off.
So much sacrifice just to get educated. I never even thought about that. I just get frustrated because I also teach online, and sometimes the internet doesn't work. And you know, when the Mexico earthquake, the Mexico City earthquake happened just a few months back, that affected all the services for about 2 days. And then the hurricanes that come through, you know, you just never know if you're going to have reliable services or not here. But you just deal with it. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
So what else would you like to say or include that we haven't talked about?
I think that a lot of people who, when they think about, you know, if people who listen to your podcast or watch this on YouTube, when they think about moving to Mexico, they often will think about certain places, right? Like San Miguel de Allende, maybe Oaxaca City, or the Chapala area. Yeah. But I would say that you shouldn't be afraid to think outside of those places.
Yeah.
Especially like in the situation when you're the only foreigner, or there aren't many foreigners. I think the people are a lot more open. They're a lot more accepting. You'll find people who want to help you, who want to know you. And when you're in the places that are more kind of expat enclaves, maybe the locals they're used to seeing people come and go, so they won't take the time to get to know you, because they'll just assume that you're going to be going soon. But when you get out of that into smaller cities, you'll meet people who do want to, like, I want to help you. You know, landlords who are wonderful and go above and beyond to help you. They'll turn up in the middle of the night when you don't have any hot water, any gas, and fix it right away.
Oh, you must be in a better area than mine. Nobody shows up when we've really got a true emergency.
Yeah. And also the costs are also just so much cheaper when you get outside of the tourist areas.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. I've had both sides of the coin, where I've been like the only foreigner, or the resident foreigner, whatever you want to call it, and where we're at right now, where you can pretty much, I mean, you can count on good services. You can pretty much have anything you can get in the States or Canada. So there's advantages and disadvantages. I like not having fast food around, but I do like having our Walmart when we want to go.
Yeah.
Do
Well,
that.
now you can order everything online now. So
That's true.
and pre-pandemic, there were places where we couldn't get a delivery, or the delivery would take, it would actually, the tracking number would show that it'd been delivered, but it hadn't. It just been signed off by, they brought it to the nearest big city where somebody received it, and that other like third party person was going to bring it on to you. But since the pandemic, the delivery services have really boomed.
They've had to step up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because they stepped up, and other places they kind of did everywhere, so now anything you need, you can get. We live in a smaller town, and we don't order tons of stuff online, but the stuff that, like, maybe car parts, we have an old truck, that would be hard. It would be difficult to find the parts locally just because it's a small town. We've been able to order those on Mercado Libre, and yeah, it's really changed. Like, in the time since when I first came to Mexico, living in a smaller town was more, you were definitely roughing it, and it was more of a hardship. But now I don't think it is at all.
Yeah, just adding a little bit about what you say, like Amazon. My son's laptop charger broke about 3 days ago. So he's like, Mom, I gotta order that. And he was using mine. So I'm like, I'm gonna order that. I don't want you using my laptop. I ordered it on Amazon Mexico, and I got a notification. Let's see, I ordered it on, let's just say, Thursday. And they sent me a note that it was going to be here on Wednesday, or Tuesday or Wednesday. And my son's like, yeah, that's so fast. Can you believe it arrived the next day? I couldn't even believe it. I was like, and when we were 9 months in the States, in Northern California recently, Amazon was taking forever, any kind of thing to get in the States. And here in Mexico, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so effective. So many times that I've ordered things from Amazon Mexico, it's come before the expected arrival date. And I'm thrilled.
Yeah, I just ordered, I took advantage of the Buen Fin, the sale weekend last weekend, and ordered something from Home Depot, because we don't have a Home Depot here in town. And it was supposed to arrive like this coming Wednesday, and it arrived last Friday. So it actually came like 5 days early.
Yeah, that happens to us all the time. I love it. It's wonderful.
And I visited the US in September to visit my mom, and I was shocked when I went into the Walmart and how empty, I'd never seen a Walmart that wasn't like chock full of goods, and there were empty shelves in all the departments. Like, I wanted to get a collar for my cat, and there you could see that they normally would have like 20 choices, and they had one. There was only one in
wow.
And in all the departments were like that. But here in Mexico, we haven't really had any shortages due to COVID at all.
We always have toilet paper. We always have water. Yeah, none of the things that happen in the States. I did not like, and I don't like what I see in our country, the way things are very much in decline right now in so many ways. I couldn't get out fast enough. In January, I made the decision. I said, we're leaving today. Bought the tickets and we're out of here. It was that fast because I couldn't take it one more day there. That's because another thing is you get used to living like this. And I always ask the people that I interview, how much do you think you've had something to recently compare it to excuse me. I would say that my stress level has gone down probably 80% by moving to Mexico. What do you think?
Yeah, those kinds of questions are difficult since I have lived here, since I was 24 when I arrived, and most of my adult life has been here in Mexico, and I've never really been a parent in the US. But I definitely think like I would like it the few times I've gone for extended visits, like I've gone for 4 months with my kids before to spend time with my parents. the stress of just like preparing to take them there, like it was, yeah, that was tremendous stress. And you know, so yeah, it's definitely like an easier, more kind of, it's, you know, slow pace, to be stereotypical, but it is slower paced lifestyle. You know, the only thing I would say is that Mexico has given me a lot of stress around government trámites, government paperwork, yeah. And I recently went to renew one of my kids' passports in the US embassy, and I had forgotten the copy of one of the documents because you needed original and copy. And I was like, oh no, I forgot to make a copy of that. And the person was like, oh, it's no problem. And she turned around and made a photocopy from the machine behind her. And I was like, oh, Mexican officials would have sent me out, right? You'd have to go out and find somewhere and get back in the line, and you know, all the paperwork and everything. That's the only thing that's way more stressful here. And that also extends to banking, because I work for a Mexican institution. I have to have a Mexican bank account, and I try to avoid having to go to the bank at all, because the bank is like, they're just, most of it's the problem is that the local employees have no authority, right? So they won't do anything without, like, they'll do exactly the letter of what it says in their procedures, and anything slightly different, they can't do it and they can't help you. Whereas in the US, you know, banks are like, they're trying to find a way to help you and make it work for you. And I was also,
there's a big difference between customer service here and there.
Yeah.
Although I've heard that it's getting worse in the US, just because there's a lot of disgruntled people right now. Maybe, I don't know, it depends, but I think in general you will get much better customer service for corporations and basic things that you need. But yeah, it's always a little bit of a lottery. You never know what you're gonna get. I think here, yeah, and they won't. Employees, they're like, we can't do that. They won't even consult. But I think I've seen that in Argentina too. I think it's a Latin America issue too, not just Mexico. Yeah, just my take. I could be wrong. Anything else you want to say? What are your thoughts? If you have any others that you'd like to add?
That also people, you know, a lot of times people are worried, people with children are worried, can I move my children abroad? And I think that living in Mexico, I was able to give my children a childhood that was more like the childhood I had in the 70s and 80s in the US. They're, you know, they can play outside freely with no supervision. Also, we don't live downtown, so, you know, in a city in Mexico, the traffic is often horrendous and there aren't yards and stuff. But because we don't live downtown, it's a lot like, you know, childhoods that are long gone in the US, where the kids play outside with the other neighbor kids and come back when they get hungry. And
you mean to say your kids aren't the whole time just on electronic devices?
Well, the teenagers are more on electronic devices, but no, but they also go out somewhat too. But my son, who's 11, he's not on electronic devices all the time.
So he's living an old-fashioned childhood. Love it.
Yeah.
A wholesome childhood. Good job, Mom. Good job. Well, thank you so much for coming today. If there's not anything else that you want to add, I echo what you say, that I'm so thankful that I brought my kids here. And we have also lived in Mérida, by the way. Too hot we couldn't handle the heat there. We like this area a lot better because of the climate, but really there are so many places around Mexico, and whatever you want, you can find. So if you land in a place that you're not particularly in love with, like we weren't in love with Mérida, we found another place and we're in love with where we live now. So you're going to find some place that you're going to like. And certainly a kind culture, a kind and welcoming culture here. everywhere.
Yeah, that's true. It's a really varied country. You know, there's mega cities and there's small towns and there's
Everything.
tropical, there's dry, there's all different kinds of climates, there's history, there's modern places. Yeah.
There's everything that you can possibly want in a country that if you want to do something, you can create it. Yeah, that's what I like about living abroad, especially in Latin America, is if you have an idea, most likely you're going to be able to create it and it's going to succeed. And there's a lot of entrepreneurialism here. That's what Mexicans do. They just, you see a lot of things that you're like, oh, you know, and vehicles that you'll never see anywhere else, that how they just kind of create, they're very resourceful, you know, and they'll just create it, and you as an expat can come in and you can offer things that people will actually appreciate, you know, because maybe they don't have it in the area. You can just, I like living here because you can create things, you know, and for me, that's fun. So for those of you who are listening, don't forget to subscribe, as we feature a lot of interesting perspectives in these podcast interviews in both English and Spanish. Melissa, thanks again for coming today. I want to extend an invite to you that you're welcome to come and stay with us in Chapala.
Oh, so thank you.
If you want to take a little trip, you've got a place to stay.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for coming on, and I wish you the best, and we're going to be very much in touch after this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.